Hey y'all, Taylor Ursula here. We are days away from embarking upon this year's Pisces season, and it's probably time that we take a look at what we have in store. So let's do it. So, right off the bat, what I want to tell you about this Pisces season is that it's going to be different than previous Pisces seasons we have experienced for a couple of reasons. First of all, last year we had Jupiter moving through Pisces, which was a very, very quite literal Piscean adventure. We had Jupiter moving through Pisces during Pisces season. So we had a lot of meetups with Jupiter, a lot of planets sort of swimming very deep in the ether. It was somewhat dreamy, somewhat fantastical, maybe a little bit overwhelming, a lot of feelings that we maybe weren't ready for, and all of that swirling around inside of us while still being humans, needing to rationalize and reason. So while it was quite a time last year, we're going to have a bit of a different vibe. This year, Jupiter, traditional ruler of Pisces, is moving through Aries. This means a couple of things. One, Jupiter is next door to a sign that it rules, which means that it can't really see what's going on very clearly. Think about this as being your next door neighbor. You can kind of hear some of the muffled sounds going on. Maybe you can kind of tell when someone's moving furniture, but other than that, you really don't know what's happening over there. So consider that this Pisces season will be a little bit muddled in that the planet ruling this cycle is busy, busy next door, kind of living a different life. And what a different life it is living. In Aries, Jupiter is less concerned with the big picture of everything, the interconnectivity of life and humanity and possibility, and is much more interested in go, go, go. Vroom, vroom is a Jupiter in Aries vibe. It very much wants to experience and see itself sort of grow into robustness through its experience. It wants to see what it's made of by putting itself out into the world. So Pisces season may not have the kind of slow, dreamy vibes that we're used to. It may be a little bit faster paced than most Pisces seasons. Another reason Pisces season is going to be different this year is that you may know Saturn is coming to stay for a couple of years. We've had Saturn hanging out in its own sign. We call that domicile. We've had Saturn hanging out in domicile for about 5 to 6 years now. That's been a lot of hardcore Saturn lessons, putting your nose to the grindstone, climbing up that hill, taking in kind of the tough lessons, if you will, but getting something concrete out of it at the end of it. And this time, for the next 2.5 years or so, starting on March 7th, we're going to have Saturn entering Pisces for the first time in about 28 years. That's going to be a much different energy than what we're used to from Saturn recently. It's going to be somewhat antithetical, somewhat contradictory. Alice Sparkly Cat, if you follow Alice Sparkly Cat, amazing astrologer, has called this sort of a time of confusion, and I love that. We are absolutely walking into a time where things that were tangible are now sort of being tested against the great waves of humanity, against the large expectations we tend to carry in Pisces, right? So Saturn, once entering Pisces, is going to start kind of chipping away at some of the frivolity in Pisces and ask us to kind of start creating a container in this space. Again, kind of antithetical. Pisces, as we know, is the big ocean, is the whole world, and Saturn wants to put a shape around it, wants to put walls around it, wants to solidify. So how do we solidify water, right? What's that? That's kind of the vibe for the next 2.5 years. How do we apply something practical and tangible to something that is emotional and intangible, right? So with those two themes happening during Pisces season, we're going to have kind of a different vibe. So just prepare for, the typical Pisces feelings, the typical Pisces beauty, right? But recognize too that it will be kind of coming through a different lens. We will have different assignments, right, for this Pisces time. thinking maybe more long-term about what this Pisces energy looks like for us and what we're trying to shape here out of it. And we can think of this way as well. Jupiter, as I mentioned, was just in Pisces, perhaps illuminating a lot of ideas for us, a lot of visions, a lot of possibilities. And we all know that possibilities are really beautiful, but at a certain point, we have to put them onto paper. We have to begin to imagine how they can become real. More often than not, things in Pisces stay in Pisces, kind of like Vegas. What happens in Pisces stays in Pisces a lot of the time. A lot of the dreams that transpire through the lens of Pisces simply don't translate into the kind of real world that Saturn is about. So some of those ideals, some of those dreams, some of those visions that Jupiter may have brought to our attention while Jupiter was in Pisces throughout 2022 may be asked to kind of take a seat at the table and see if they're actually viable once we put them to the metaphorical paper, as Saturn will ask us to. So, things to think about. I want to run through the transits pretty quickly and just get a sense of what do we got happening in this Pisces season. Okay, let's take a look. So we're starting off Pisces season with a pretty important, potent new moon. You may have noticed we've been having new moons at the beginning of these zodiacal seasons, which is kind of a really nice way to start the season. We are fresh into the energy and we're able to think about what kind of visions we hold for that, what we want to see take shape over the course of the season. This new moon is at 1 degree, so again, very fresh. So fresh and so clean. A little fresh baby moon for you. So something interesting happening at this new moon and kind of giving us a taste for what Saturn will look like in Pisces. We have the moon conjunct Saturn right before it is new in Pisces. And so that will certainly give us a feeling of some of that constriction or a preview of what we're being asked to take with us as Saturn leaves Aquarius before moving into Pisces. So what have we learned in this Saturn and Aquarius time? What are we making out of that? And what conscious decisions are we able to choose for ourselves now that Saturn is finishing up in Aquarius? The other event happening at the new moon on Sunday, the 19th, is that Venus is about to just head on out of Pisces, out of her sign of exaltation. Before she does so, she makes a sextile, a 60-degree angle to Pluto. Pluto's hanging out at 29 degrees. Venus is hanging out at 29 degrees. You may know that this is known as the anaretic degree or the critical degree. So at 29 degrees, something is yearning to be finished, to be acknowledged so that we can move forward. Both of these planets are moving signs. We have Venus moving into Aries at the end of the day after this new moon. And we have Pluto moving into Aquarius at the end of March. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but just know that both these planets are at the tail end of these signs. And that means that they've done everything there is to do in this sign. They've had all the meetings that they had scheduled during this time. And now they're kind of hoping to get moving on. So this means that we need to wrap things up for these planets. And that's what these planets are in conversation about. Venus, sextiling Pluto, wants to understand what kind of power struggles we might be in currently, what kind of power we need to catalyze within ourselves in order to be able to work alongside others. Just bringing to the surface what sort of power dynamics exist for us currently, and perhaps in the light of the new moon, making some sort of commitment to what we want to see for ourselves interpersonally moving forward. The next day, we have Mercury and Aquarius making a sextile to Chiron and Aries. Now, if you know about Chiron, you know that Chiron is sort of our everlasting eternal wound, only to be healed through acknowledging this wound, embracing this wound, and guiding others toward their own acknowledgement and embracing of this wound. So with this conversation, this may be a literal conversation about our pains. Mercury wants to talk. In Aquarius, Mercury is very neutral. Mercury is able to be level-headed, able to be very cut and dry. And Chiron and Aries is typically about showing us where we don't feel like we can be authentic, showing us where we've been wounded around our own kind of instincts and expressive urges. So Mercury in conversation with Chiron may want us to have a conversation about those pains, or at the very least may bring those pains to the surface for us to begin processing in some way. On the 21st, we see Mercury square Uranus. Okay, so everything that came up when Mercury sextiled Chiron may now create some sort of disruption or some sort of interruption, some sort of abrupt change that we may see ourselves participating in. Perhaps we acknowledge something about our wounds, and that allows us or catalyzes us to take some radical step or change that we never would have been compelled to do. Maybe we wouldn't have felt empowered or emboldened to be able to do that. Wednesday, the next day, on Mercury Day, also, we have Mercury in Aquarius trining Mars in Gemini. Okay. This is the energy we've been waiting for, all right? Mercury was retrograde, Mars was retrograde, Mercury was ruling Mars in retrograde. They weren't seeing each other the entire time, okay? Remember what I said about next door neighbors and how you don't really know what's going on over there? Consider Mercury and Mars kind of live across the hall from each other in a way that they cannot see each other at all. They don't even hear what they're doing. There's no walls between them. They can't even hear what's happening. These planets have been in this configuration for months. It has been driving us up the wall. It has been making us feel like our actions are over here and our rationality is over here, or our duty or responsibility is over here. And how am I going to tend to both? I can't even keep an eye on both of them at the same time. Okay, so Mercury, done with retrograde. In Aquarius, in an air sign, again, neutral, rational, able to now make eye contact with Mars, who it is ruling. While Mars is slowly trekking its way through its retrograde shadow, which it will clear finally in the spring. This may be a huge catharsis. This may be some point in time where things just come together and finally make sense for us. Things that we've been trying to manage for months now, just starting to click into place. Things we've been waiting on, finally coming to fruition, just getting the wheels turning again. This is a really great day for just getting things back on track, right? Okay. Friday, the 24th, we have Venus, opposite Ceres. Venus in Aries, opposite Ceres in Libra. Ceres also being retrograde and in a sign that Venus is ruling. So this is going to bring up some dynamics. Venus in Aries wants to be free to pursue its desires without any restraints, without needing permission. And Ceres in Libra is about nourishing the people, kind of feeding we the people. So when these two bodies are in conflict, especially with Venus ruling Ceres, there may be a tug of war happening between what we want to pursue for ourselves and what we feel obligated or beholden to nourish others with. We want what we want, and we want to pursue what we want, and we know that we have the right to pursue what we want. And at the same time, we also have relationships that we care about. We have other people that we care about, and we know that we want to live up to the commitments that we've made to them. So how do we do both? This is a time to navigate this, especially as this is happening on a Venus day. So this may be a pretty big theme. On the same day, we have the sun in Pisces sextile the North Node in Taurus at 5 degrees. So this is illuminating to us, Venus is also ruling that North Node in Taurus, illuminating to us that what we do with those revelations, what we do with that confrontation and how we choose to move forward with it may somehow connect with us moving towards a sense of purpose. Kind of a nice setup if we use it properly. On the 27th, we have our first quarter moon in Gemini at 8 degrees. This is also the degree at which Mars is stationed. So you can see where we're going here. I set you up for a conversation on Wednesday between Mercury and Mars. Now our first quarter moon. at 8 degrees of Gemini, where Mars stationed. This is also going to be sextile Venus in Aries. So this is really us starting to make use of what has been able to move forward with the Mercury-Mars conversation. Things are going to start clicking into place, and we're going to suddenly have expectations for things to start moving. We're going to have more information. And so this first quarter moon is going to say, what are you doing with it? How are you using that information? And we're going to go, I hope I'm using this for the best possible reason. The sextile to Venus absolutely encourages us to connect with others at this time. So this is great. What are we using this information for? Let's find out by connecting with other people. Let's make sure that the goals and visions that I had before these retrogrades happened, let's make sure that they're still what I want. Let's make sure that they're still going to connect with the people I had lined up with when I did. Let's make sure that everyone's still on the same page now that things are moving forward. On the 1st of March, also my birthday, we have a very deep void of course moon. And what this means is that the moon is taking a deep nap, okay? The moon is done with conversations, right? We've got this first quarter moon, all very big. The moon's going to conjoin Mars at this time, maybe illuminate what actions we can do to move forward, and then it's going to go bye-bye. The moon's going to go bye-bye. This is nice. If you can take March 1st, a Wednesday, off, I would say go ahead and do it, because while the moon's going to be taking a big nap and therefore not asking a lot of us, Venus and Jupiter are going to meet. Okay, so this is a really cute day. If anything, this is like the cutest day of winter. All right, Pisces season is the end of winter, so this is the cutest day of winter. This is going to be a day where we want to indulge in some capacity. Maybe we want to spend a significant amount of time with our loved ones. We want to splurge on something that helps us feel really amazing and empowered, right? We're talking about Aries, so it's about me. It's about the self. And so this may be a day where we invest in ourselves in some capacity. Maybe we're able to, maybe it is even just taking a big rest with the moon. If you can take a day off and give yourself just a day to Netflix and chill. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not Netflixing and chilling anymore because Netflix took away everyone's passwords. Okay, so whatever you have filled into that spot, if you can take a day to do that for yourself, I recommend it. It's going to be the perfect time to just chill, be really cute, give yourself things that you haven't been able to previously or have been telling yourself you don't deserve. Don't go too crazy, but go a little crazy. Okay. On the 2nd, we have Mercury conjunct Saturn, all right? And this is, again, at the 29th degree. So Mercury in Aquarius finishing up, it will move into Pisces the same day. So Mercury is essentially bringing us messages from this Saturn before it moves into Pisces. This is Saturn's final conversation. This is on the 2nd, and Saturn moves into Pisces on the 7th at the full moon, no less. And so this is going to be a time where we're able to really clarify what we've learned. Mercury will bring to our attention what Saturn has been up to. And some astrologers like to describe that when Saturn is done with a sign, it gives you a present at the end. And I really enjoy this idea. This time on the 2nd, when Mercury conjoins Saturn, may be when that present or gift becomes clear to you. There's information being passed on about what's been established before we move into Pisces and start all over with Saturn. Okay, so on the 3rd, which is a Friday, we have Venus conjunct Chiron. And so I brought up Chiron a moment ago with the Mercury transit to Chiron, a conversation. Venus conjoining Chiron may bring some of those wounds of authenticity and expression to the surface of our interpersonal relationships. It is a Venus day, and this means it might be a really good day to work through some of those wounds. Maybe you've had some sticky relationships. Maybe you've had some dynamics shift while each of you or all of you have evolved within a certain dynamic. And maybe this is a time where you can bring attention to What has shifted? What's not feeling right? What's not feeling great? And what can we do to connect with other people through this feeling? On Monday the 6th, we have a pretty cute sextile between the Sun and Uranus at 15 degrees. And this may be a conversation that illuminates to us some of the innovations we've been able to create or work with while Uranus has been in Taurus. This has been a big chunk of time, at least the past 3 to 4 years. And so Uranus themes are probably clear to you at this point. The Sun in Pisces might be showing you how you can expand upon some of those innovations, some of those ideas that you've utilized, and show you how they are helping you grow as a person. What have those innovations given you as an individual, and how do you see yourself growing through them? And on Tuesday, the 7th, we have our Virgo full moon at 16 degrees. Now, I mentioned a minute ago, this is when Saturn enters Pisces as well. So it's interesting to note, for anyone with Virgo placements or a Virgo moon, you're going to start experiencing some of the oppositions from Saturn at this time. So things to keep in mind. This is not going to be the easiest full moon. Let me just make that really clear right now. This is a full moon where the moon is square Mars, ooh, and opposite Neptune. Ooh. So let's dig in. With the moon square Mars, we're going to be frustrated. We're going to want to go one way and have it revealed to us that something else is happening at a challenging angle to where we're trying to move. This may mean that we find ourselves really heated, really lashing out if we're not careful. Mars is still in Gemini, which is a sign about words. And so we may use some of those words in a scathing way if we are not really intentional about containing some of this energy. Virgo is a perfectionist, right? Pisces is the vision. I want perfection. I can see it in my mind. And Virgo is the executor. I want to make that happen. I want to make your perfection real, girl. Okay, except that Virgo's very rarely fully satisfied with the end results. And that might become very clear at this moon. The other thing making this moon tricky is an opposition to Neptune. This moon being full is possibly illuminating some of the illusions that we might be operating under. Consider that these frustrations with Mars are probably going to be related to these illusions with Neptune. Why is that? Because very soon after this, which we'll get to in a moment, Mars is going to square Neptune. Okay, so they're connected. Let's talk about that now, actually, because that square is going to be the final square of 3 that we've had since Mars was preparing for retrograde. So right before Mars stationed retrograde, Mars made this square to Neptune. That really illuminated to us where we were trying to go and where we were really confused, confounded, where there wasn't enough information to move forward, where there was kind of some sort of mystery around what we were trying to do. We couldn't really get answers. And then Mars stationed retrograde. So we never really got those answers. Mars squared Neptune again right after stationing retrograde. If anything, that made us even more confounded and confused. We were even more clear on how little we knew. And that probably drove us deeper into frustration. So with this full moon, squaring Mars before opposing Neptune, this full moon is giving us a taste of what that final Mars-Neptune square is going to mean. It may be asking us to, however this makes sense to you, whatever your God looks like, let go and let God. This may be a time where we have done as much as we can, and we need to be patient. We need to not try to push because we may create more chaos than we intend to. We need to not try to lash out because we may not have all the information yet. We're not going to know for sure until Mars makes that final square to Neptune. And we'll touch upon that in a moment. Back at the beginning of Pisces season, on the 21st, we talked about Mercury square Uranus and how that was going to have us sort of breaking out of some old ways of thinking, breaking out of some old ways of being, maybe catalyzing some change in our life that we didn't see coming, some sort of disruptiveness that may be helpful to us in the long run. Now, on the 11th, we have Mercury in Pisces now forming a sextile to Uranus and Taurus. So what was maybe brash, abrupt, disruptive, now starts to soften, starts to kind of integrate into our way of thinking. Do remember that Mercury is technically in its detriment in Pisces. So this may be a time where we are able to take what was rational in Aquarius, and if you could put words to that for me, that would be great. We may be able to create some poetry out of what was previously really frustrating. We may be finding a rhythm with this new way of thinking, of I don't know, just our attitudes about things may suddenly start to feel a bit of flow, where before it was suddenly I'm changing. Now it's, and these changes feel nice in these ways. On this day, we also have Venus in Aries sextile Mars in Gemini. Also cute because Mars is ruling Venus in Aries. So this is a day where maybe some of our previous frustrations begin to turn into solutions. We have the energy to make things happen, and we also have the attitude and the patience and the just good spirit to connect with others to see what's possible. So things might feel like they're moving forward at this time. We're like, okay, I'm getting the word that things are good. We're good to go. We're getting that green light. What was maybe a speed bump is now a smooth path. Let's do it. Lastly, on this day, we have Jupiter conjunct Chiron. So we've had a lot of Chiron conjunctions and conversations in this Pisces season, which may be fitting for Pisces season. It's a time to be in our feelings. So with Jupiter conjunct Chiron, right, we've had the conversation between Mercury and Chiron, then Venus and Chiron, now Jupiter and Chiron. Perhaps we're able to actually take pride in something that was once previously painful to us. Jupiter, again, wants to be seen, wants to be recognized, is robust, is feeling powerful in Aries. I'm going to catch fire. It's going to be amazing. With Chiron, Jupiter may be illuminating, I know how to help you spiritually connect that to something. I know how to open up your perspective about this Chiron wound. That could be huge for us. It can go a little far. Jupiter, again, makes things really big. So it may be that to get to the pride about this wound, we actually have to kind of feel this wound a little more than we're used to. Take it easy when it comes to Jupiter. A little bit goes a long way. On the 14th, we arrive at our Mars-Neptune square. Fear me strength. Okay, so I mentioned a moment ago, this is the final square. This first square happened just before Halloween. Think back, okay? Think back to what was frustrating, to what you were trying to accomplish then that was just not happening. It wasn't the right time, it wasn't the right vibe, it wasn't the right people. The vision didn't translate onto paper. It just wasn't coming together. We weren't able to get things done, and we had to reroute. We had to put things down for a time. Reflect on these things and consider what kind of confusion may be clearing at this time. Again, this is the final square, so we will come up against something bigger than us, more confounding than us. Mars is an individual planet. Neptune is an outer planet, and like a really outer planet. So we may not know what is standing in our path, and we may be tempted to lose faith. We may be tempted to give up. And the challenge is to, again, let go and let God. Surrender the experience, however it makes sense to you. Surrender your ego and your ego needs to something more spiritual than you. At the same time, we have our third quarter moon in Sagittarius. So it's a pretty potent day to have this final square while we have the sun and the moon in square, and it's closing out the Pisces season. So at this time, we're being shown what we're ready to let go of. So I love this in the timing of the Mars-Neptune square, because letting go and letting God is a very Sagittarian theme, and that is the Sagittarian third quarter moon. So we may find ourselves confronting, um, gosh, what doesn't work for us anymore. Keep in mind too, this moon is going to T-square these two planets. This may be a chance for us to really get clear on what's not clear. And in that sense, beyond that, what we're no longer willing to be unclear about. So before we took a pause at this first square, at the second square, maybe we grew even more frustrated. At this third square, we might say, here is what I know I cannot accomplish. I'm going to put that down for good now. I'm putting that away. This Mars square Neptune is stopping me and asking me to consider what's spiritually important to me, beyond what's important to my ego and what I want to see happen for myself. What's actually spiritually important for me? This third quarter moon may be a big cleanse for what we thought we had to accomplish, or how we thought we had to accomplish it, or where we thought it was going to go and what we thought it was going to look like. Okay, this moon may be a huge breath of release, of just saying, you know what? If it's not working out right now, it's not for me. If it's not aligned with my spirit and therefore worth all of this effort, let me surrender it. And that's okay. That's not a shameful thing. That's actually a really graceful thing. It's a huge accomplishment to be able to recognize what's not working and to be willing to put that down. So keep that in mind for this Sagittarius third quarter moon. Because the next day, the sun is going to conjoin Neptune. So we're going to walk right into the fog. We're going to go straight into the ether space and sort of surrender all of this to Neptune. We're not going to see anything. I like to describe Neptune transits as being in a car wash. You put the car into neutral and you enter into a dark space, and it's full of suds and soap, and you can turn the music on. And that's about it. You're not going anywhere. You're not planning anything. You're certainly not moving with control over the vehicle. So consider the sun merging into Neptune as a day to kind of be cleansed, to be renewed, to really step into that sense of spirituality, again, whatever it means to you, and to say, I am willing to surrender this. I am ready to move forward. I trust that what's happening here is aligned for me. I have made a conscious decision here, and I choose this path. The next day we have Mercury walking into Neptune. Okay, so we're really going to go deep in there. We're really going to go straight into the fog. That week might be very minimally physically productive. This may be a week of deep cleansing. It makes a lot of sense because a few days after this, we're going to enter Aries season, which is the beginning of the astrological year. So it makes a lot of sense to be moving through a great deal of release at this time, acknowledging whatever our sense of spirituality is, how it's gotten us through these times, how we've navigated our current sort of smorgasbord of life, and making peace with what hasn't worked out, making peace with the efforts that haven't translated into some sort of earthly, tangible gesture, and just cleansing ourselves for the next cycle, getting ready for what's going to start next in Aries season and with the Aries new moon. On this day, we have quite a few transits. The sun squares Mars. Oh, that's going to pinch. That may be where we have to confront whatever ego needs we've released through Neptune. And our sun, who is us, may say, but I was really attached to that. But I really thought that was part of who I am. It may actually be part of who you were, and now it is no longer. So be gentle with yourself at this time. On this day, we also have Venus square Pluto. At the top of Pisces season, we talked about Venus in sextile to Pluto, and that was a much easier conversation, much more free-flowing. Venus was in her sign of exaltation. We're able to see the big picture of things and get a sense of how power dynamics impact us on a grand scale. Venus hanging out in Aries, again, much more personal, much more about the individual. Also, technically in detriment. not a sign that Venus in traditional astrology is very respected within. And so this brings up a different conversation. This is much more of a confrontation, if you will. Venus in Aries wants, again, to be independent, wants to pursue what it wants to pursue without being held back, without being judged. And Pluto is kind of all about judging, isn't it? Pluto's definitely about establishing the hierarchy of everything and questioning who has the power. And so what I said a minute ago was respect. Venus doesn't necessarily receive respect in Aries. And so this may be a time where we feel confronted by where we are not really respected in our sort of unique or individual approach to something, pursuing a desire, pursuing an individual quest, and being confronted by Pluto, who is in a sign about collectiveness, and is in a sign about tradition, right? Is in a sign about tangible structures and capitalism at this point. We're really radicalizing Capricorn, but you know, especially here in the States, it's very much a sign about capitalism. So Venus wants to be free to pursue what she wants. And Pluto says, don't you care if the rest of society respects you? Sit with that for a moment. It's not an easy conversation. Another difficult conversation on this day, Mercury in Pisces is going to square Mars. So we have the Sun squaring Mars and Mercury squaring Mars on the same day. It's not easy. That's what I'll say. It's, again, going to be, if the Sun confronting Mars has to kind of integrate this new way of being, even though our ego is still sort of attached to the old way of being, then Mercury needs to also receive that update. Now, Mercury, again, is in detriment in Pisces, and this may be maybe our minds against our will. Our poetic mind might be much more invested in this new way of being. This poetic mind might say, it's okay that I release these ego needs. I'm in Pisces, and in the grand scheme of things, I don't need to be that. And Mars may say, well, I don't know about you, but I still want to have access to that. I'm in Gemini. I need to be able to make decisions very quickly. I don't know that we should just cut that off entirely just yet. So how do we make space for both maintaining our momentum on this trajectory that we've built so far, and not just scrapping everything and starting over, but also allowing for these more spiritual integrations to be happening? All right, these are things we need to make room for and be gentle with ourselves around. And at the end of this day, Venus moves into Taurus. So if Venus is going to have to confront Pluto about this sign of the individual and the individual pursuit against the tradition of Capricorn, then at least she gets to go home and eat a snack, right? So this is a nice day for Venus. Venus gets into a fight with Pluto. Venus gets to go home to her beautiful, beautiful, just home of comforts, home of treasures, home of creature comforts, and just relax, ground down, just kind of lick those wounds for a moment. The next day, on the 17th, we have Mercury in Cazimi with the Sun at 26 degrees. And the same day, Venus, freshly in Taurus, is going to sextile Saturn in Pisces. So this is really a day for us to kind of smooth out what's happened the day before, right? The day before being very chaotic, being very ramped up, very energetic, not in good or bad ways, just being neutral with it. But on the 17th, we get this Cazimi, so we get some clarity. And that also maybe feels like the second part of the cleanse. Both of them move through Neptune just a couple of days before, and then they get to meet. And so even if Mars is cranky about the changes that we're going through, the Sun and Mercury get to meet and enjoy a moment of clarity on who we're becoming now that we are shifting out of all of this. So keep in mind that does technically start us on the journey toward our next Mercury retrograde, but we'll deal with that another time. On the 18th, we have Mercury in Pisces, sextile Pluto in Capricorn. All right, so we're making a little peace with some of the Pluto confrontations we've had. We are once again integrating what this release is. And of course, we're at the 29th degree of Pisces, which is not only the final degree of a sign, but is the final degree of the entire zodiac, right? So we're doing some more big picture processing here. We're doing some deeper integration about what this journey we've been on and what this Pisces season has really shown us about ourselves, about how we feel integrated into the society we live in, and how we are evolving within that. Right after that conversation with Pluto, Mercury moves into Aries, sort of ending the Pisces reign here, right? We've got a bunch of planets in Pisces. Now we're slowly shifting out. And so this again is that sort of top of the zodiac cleansing, right? We're about to enter spring when the sun enters Aries just a couple days later. And so Mercury's getting a head start and just opening our eyes to kind of what's going to happen here during Aries season. And finally, on the last day of Pisces season, on the 20th, we have Venus in Taurus ruling the North Node, conjunct the North Node. This shows us a really big piece of this nodal journey we've been on. The North Node has been in Taurus since mid-January 2022. We've been having eclipses across the Taurus and the Scorpio axis. They've been revealing to us beauty and rest and enjoyment and pleasure, and have been asking us to confront attachment and fear and maybe obsessive attitudes. And so with Venus joining the North Node in Taurus, we're really starting to wrap up this journey. This is 4 degrees, so the North Node is going to be making its way into Aries by summer. So we're starting to close out this story. Venus here may be showing us what kind of pleasure we've been developing for ourselves, maybe revealing to us how we've changed our attitudes about beauty, how we've reevaluated what's important to us. Maybe we've built in more time for slowness and developed patience in this time. Those are important qualities. Those are important things to have space for in our lives. So this is a beautiful energy. This is Venus really showing us what that has looked like for ourselves and allowing us to celebrate those developments. And of course, we can't end Pisces season without the sun in Pisces entering into this conversation with Pluto. So what a purge, okay? This is a huge way to end Pisces season and enter Aries, especially because this is the final conversation that Pluto will have before Pluto enters Aquarius, just a week after this. So this is maybe a time of shedding, right? If what comes up for us when the sun merges with Neptune is about spirituality and about who we are in the bigger picture of things and showing us how it is that we're growing and evolving beyond some of the tangible earthly values we thought we were attached to, then the sun having this conversation with Pluto really allows us to shed everything that we just let go of. Neptune is like, it doesn't really matter to you. That was really part of your vision. And you know what? The earth means more to you than this concept or this entity or this being this person or fulfilling this role. And Pluto says, yeah, how does it feel to let go of some of that? What does that free up for you? How does this empower you? How do you shed what's holding you back and step into the newest version of yourself with integrity and clarity and consciousness? So again, a really beautiful way to end Pisces season and to start over with the sun entering Aries, because essentially we go through sort of a big purge. If Neptune is the car wash, let's keep this going, then Pluto is, it's just a laser beam. Like the laser beam that just sort of lasers off all of the remaining residue, right? So we get to leave Pisces season really stepping out of whoever we were when we walked into it. I don't think we're going to be the same. I think we're going to evolve pretty radically. And I think that is very fitting for starting to wrap up Mars retrograde shadow and just really stepping into this new sense of movement, this new sense of power, not in the Plutonian sense, but physical, personal drive, physical, personal adrenaline, physical, personal momentum. We're going to be coming out very differently this month than we go into it. That sounds pretty good to me. I hope that sounds good to you. I'm excited to see what this shift in this energy and in this year are going to reveal to us. So, okay, if you're curious, stay tuned. We are going to pull cards for this Pisces season and get a sense of what kind of themes are coming up for us. Okay, so let's get started. The spread for our Pisces season prediction poll is going to start underneath the Chariot. For those of you who don't know, there is an affiliation between tarot cards and each year that we move through. So the year of 2023 is currently the year of the Chariot. So I've pulled this card out to be our anchor card for the rest of our pull, and we'll be pulling underneath this. All right, let's get one more hard shuffle in there. Just so satisfying, you know? All right, great. And I've gone ahead and included the spread that I created for this at the end of the video. I encourage you to pull for yourself and see what comes up. Go ahead and let me know how it turns out for you. Okay. All right, let's see what we got. Okay, so our first prompt is how Pisces season connects us to the card of the year, which is the Chariot. Okay, very interesting. We're starting off with some energy. So we are only 3 seasons into the year, and yet we are being alerted that Pisces season is some sort of crossroads for us. The Wheel of Fortune reveals to us when the wheel is spinning, and the wheel will land somewhere. Where the wheel lands depends on what we've been doing before now. So essentially, Pisces season is the kind of moment before the spin, if you will. So if the Chariot is a whole year in which we are becoming more closely aligned with some of our shadow elements. I love the way that Carl Jung describes sort of Cancer and Chariot vibes as us reclaiming the sort of shadow self that we were friends with in the womb, if you will. And so Chariot is all about getting all of our conscious aligned with our subconscious so that both are in conversation and able to move forward smoothly. When those are not aligned, we find ourselves trying to pull this way, but something's trying to pull us back this way. We might feel trying to force ourselves into motion, and it won't go because the engines aren't firing together. So this year has the potential to get our sort of pistons firing in, what's the word that I want? In collaboration with each other. There we go. And so Pisces season has a big role to play in the overall trajectory of the year, in the trajectory of us getting to know that shadow element and bringing that shadow element to the surface so that we are moving forward as a fully conscious person.
So that makes a lot of sense for all of the discussion we had about Pluto and Neptune, these outer planets who are bringing in these really big conversations to us. We have conversations of ego needs that we need to step through and dissolve. And that's going to be a big part of getting our shadow back into alignment with our conscious self. Very cool. Now, I want to take a look at kind of the two major moon phases for Pisces season. This being themes of the Pisces new moon, and this being themes of the Pisces, or the Virgo full moon, rather. Okay, very cool. So, the Two of Cups certainly brings up the theme of Venus sextile Pluto at the Pisces new moon, and getting a sense of, or getting a clearer understanding of how we show up in relationship to other. What are our power dynamics? Where do we assert power? Where do we surrender power? Where do we struggle with power with another person? This bringing us to this place of just revisiting how we connect with people, maybe refreshing some of our connections with people, which is lovely. We talked about the full moon being a difficult one. And so I'm going to go ahead and maybe, it didn't come out reversed, but I'm going to place it reversed. Okay. I'm going to, don't at me. All right. Don't come for me. We're just going to see how this feels, because the Six of Wands upright is very Jupiter and Aries, very like, yes, look at me. Yes, throw me a parade. I am awesome. And yet we talked about how the Virgo full moon is going to be a little contentious for us. We may have feelings about some of that Mars-Neptune energy pulling us away from a path of recognition that we've been in or on. Perhaps we're worried that if we put something down, if we remove our ego from something of what we're doing, that we're going to not be recognized or seen for our contribution. Okay, so these are themes to acknowledge and get really clear with. Let's put this back up right and think about how all of those challenges that we may face at the Virgo full moon about ourself and the broader universe we participate in, perhaps we're being asked to take a look at how we can still feel connected to recognition, even in the face of all those changes. Who will I be and what will I be deserving of if I am something different than what I was before? How can I still be celebrated for that? It may be important to hold on to the idea that we can still be celebrated and have a parade thrown in our name, even as we continue to evolve. Maybe the people who are throwing that parade change as we evolve and grow, and that's okay. We're making new connections at the Pisces new moon, right? So this is looking pretty good. Now, let's see what other themes we have going on for the season. Okay, this is, some nines are appearing. Very interesting. Kind of adds to the theme of all of the planets in communication with Pluto right before Pluto finally switches signs. So Pluto being at the 29th degree, wow, okay. We've got Nine of Cups, Nine of Wands, Eight of Wands, all end of cycle cards. Queen of Swords, which is a card of mastery. And then ending with the Ten of Cups, which is the final cup card before the court cards, right? And then leading us to the Fool. Okay, the Fool really highlights what I said about entering into Aries season, feeling purged as the sun sextiles and converses with Pluto, and Pluto helps us shed everything we've been before now to step into Aries season fully renewed. Leading up to that, we have these sort of decisions perhaps to make. The Nine of Cups wants us to open up to faith. Remember what I said about Neptune and how our egos can really be confounded by what we think is important here in our earthly bodies. And yet the spiritual is asking us to wish for more, or to have faith that if we step away from something that we were previously ego attached to, that we can still have good things come. And if, in fact, if we step away from that which no longer serves us, which is what the Eight of Cups asks us to do, then with the Nine, we receive this bounty of wishes that come true, wishes that couldn't have come true if we stuck to the path in the Eight of Cups and kept moving forward with things that were not fulfilling us. The Nine of Wands asks us to remember that we're not done, okay? Sometimes people describe the Nine of Wands as you're almost done. Hang in there. I admire that, but really, we're not done till we're dead. And that's kind of the message in the Nine of Swords. I'm sorry, the Nine of Wands, because we're talking about passion. In Wands, we're talking about passion. And so passion never dies unless we're really not in love with something anymore. But if we are really passionate about something, we have to keep going at it indefinitely, right? We have to keep learning it. We have to keep practicing it. We have to keep going with it. So I shy away from saying you're almost done unless it's regarding an actual tangible project, in which case you are almost done. Keep going. You're going to get there. And maybe that's some of the Mars square Neptune too. Even if Neptune is confounding your efforts, you're still going to find your way and you're still going to keep driving along this mystical space path, right? But in the grand scheme of things, we're not really ever done with our passions. And so the nine is a reminder that we chose this long winding path. That passion pulls us on a long winding path. And even if we are afraid of not receiving recognition that we feel we deserve for the progress we've made, we're actually always making progress. We're always driving along this road. That's a really nice piece of context for the Six of Wands message. And here we have the Eight of Wands, which is suggestive of putting our messages out there and seeing what lands, seeing what's able to manifest. This is cool because we talked about Mercury having a lot of conversations this month, especially in the first half of the Pisces season, in which Mercury is still in Aquarius. We're able to just neutrally send information into the world. This may be pertinent for Mercury in Pisces as well, sending out some of our visions into the world, creating art and sharing it with other people. The Queen of Swords suggests that we have gone through some deep mental mastery. We have endured the journey of the swords. I'm so glad to not see any others in this reading. That's a nice relief. So we've endured the journey of the swords. We have mastered our minds. We have gone through some of the most painful situations we've had to, and we've come out on the other side with a clear head and a clear heart, knowing exactly who we are. This is very powerful for sort of ending the zodiacal year. This is a great lesson to come into. The Ten of Cups, after the Nine of Cups. This reveals to us some sort of happy ending, some sort of fulfillment. And maybe this comes with the Mercury Cazimi. It's giving me Cazimi vibes. What did we do all of this for? I had some tough conversations this month, both inside of me and with other people outside of me. So what has this all led to? Some sort of emotional fulfillment where I am able to see an outpouring of my feelings, of my love in a really healthy expression and in a way that's visible to those I care about and love. I'm able to share this with someone. I am in emotional harmony right now based off of and thanks to all of this work I've put in this month. So it's beautiful to see all of this come to a head with the Fool, to culminate with the Fool. We can see how all of this has brought us to a place of culmination, and we are ready now to jump into the new year in Aries season. That's powerful. I love that. And if we can heed these lessons, then remember this month, this season, and these themes all participate in our successful stepping into the chariot. So again, even though it's only 3 seasons into the year, we are still able to make changes and have revelations now that can change our pathway to the chariot, which is very powerful stuff. So again, after this, I will end on the screen for the spread itself. I invite you to try it out at home, test it, let me know how it goes. How does it match up with this one? What overlaps do you end up pulling? What ends up being very different? Let me know in the comments. I can't wait to hear about it.